Ever since I was a kid, I've dreamed of having a secret library in my house with hidden compartments, fancy woodwork, and a cozy spot for reading, but I've never lived in a Victorian mansion or any house big enough to have a huge fancy library, so I built a secret library in my closet. This project pushed my skills further than anything I've ever built. Over 3 months of designing, woodworking, 3D printing, and it all started when me and my wife moved into this house. We didn't buy this house, we're just renting, and like a lot of rentals, this place has some interesting features, like this fancy restaurant fridge. Our landlord told us that the previous owner got this fridge super cheap and fixed it up himself, and that's nice and all. Like, I guess it's cool to have a fancy fridge to use, but this one doesn't have a freezer, and his solution was to put this mini freezer in a closet up the stairs. Now, the moment I saw this closet, I knew I wanted to turn it into a tiny library. And as much as I love carrying dripping ice cube trays up the stairs, I thought this might be a good opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and move the freezer closer to the kitchen. That opened up enough space that I could take down these cheap shelves, remove as much of this obsolete sound system as possible, take down the door, and that revealed a pretty decent sized closet. It might not look very big right now, but it's kind of the perfect size for a cozy library. Now, the design did change pretty significantly, so the finished library kind of looks nothing like this, but this is what I used to convince Eden to let me take over the closet. Okay, so to help convince you of the tiny library, I made a 3D model.
Okay, let's look at it. Wait, I do actually kind of like it.
So, like, this is kind of what I'm... Okay, so bit of background. When I first told Eden about this idea, she was not into it. And don't get me wrong, Eden loves a cozy library. We both love reading. When we first met, we talked about our favorite fantasy books. But to be fair to her, I told her about this idea when we were in the middle of moving. At that point, I didn't have a plan of where we'd put the freezer.
I'd like to see the 3D model of where the freezer's gonna go.
Apparently, I sold Eden so well on the tiny library that she completely forgot that the place where we put the freezer is exactly where she didn't want it to go. I feel like you do want this.
I do want it, but I also don't want a chest freezer just
All right, we'll
vibing in our living room. I've really come around to this idea.
Yeah, like to become one of its biggest supporters. So at this point, I was feeling pretty intimidated by this project. It might be a tiny library, but there were a lot of parts, some of them had to move, and the design still didn't feel quite right. But from the moment I got this idea, I knew that I wanted the library to have this really warm, rich, Victorian feeling. So I did some productive procrastination and started creating that aesthetic with a cozy rug and some peel and stick wallpaper. Ooh, that's a library. I've never used this stuff before, but it is so fun. If you've got a boring wall in your house that you want to liven up, just go browse peel and stick wallpaper options. Like, what a hack for transforming a space. It is a little tricky to put up. You have to make sure the seams are aligned, you want to smooth out all the wrinkles, but you learn pretty quick, and this stuff is renter friendly. You can just peel it off the wall when you move out. Although my landlord was pretty stoked about the tiny library when I ran it past him, so maybe he'll want to keep it when we move out. So the wallpaper took care of the walls, but now I have this ugly white ceiling that feels a little out of place in a Victorian library. A lot of these libraries have coffered ceilings. That's the grid of sunken panels and beams, and I love this look. So I designed some ceiling tiles that I could 3D print to create the look of a coffered ceiling at the reduced scale of the tiny library. To cover the ceiling, I need 32 tiles, and each one takes 4 hours to print, so there was no time to waste. I got these cranking on both of my A1s, the X1 Carbon, the P1S, the H2D, and the all-new bambulab H2S. Bambulab is one of my longest running sponsors, and I'm so grateful that they support this channel and empower my creativity because they make, hands down, my favorite 3D printers. Their machines are fast, reliable, easy to use, and the H2S is the latest addition to their lineup. This is Bamboo's most advanced single nozzle 3D printer to date, and it's compatible with the AMS2 Pro, which has an integrated drying function. I printed these tiles out of this black walnut wood PLA, which prints best when it's dry, and I cannot tell you how convenient it is to dry filament right from the AMS, which also feeds multiple filaments directly into the printer. Now you might be thinking, why 3D printed tiles? Just make a real coffered ceiling out of wood. It looks like a simple woodworking project, right? Well, even though my landlord gave his okay, way, I'm trying not to create too much irreversible damage to this house, and I was hoping that these adhesive picture hanging strips would be strong enough to hang the tiles from the ceiling. Now, these are made to hold stuff on the wall, but in this case, gravity is pulling directly down on the adhesive, so I was a little nervous that these would fail over time, and we'll see if my worries become reality. But right off the bat, this was looking incredible. The space instantly became more cozy, and it was really starting to feel like a library. Now, it took me a few days to figure out what to do about this light. I was thinking about replacing it with a smart LED pot light, but that would require a weird custom tile, and it would be partially covered by the bookcase anyway. And then I realized that I actually don't want light from above. As you'll see later on, I'm gonna build undershelf lighting directly into the bookcase, plus some nice warm lamps. Overhead lighting would just be too intense, so I just capped off this fixture and covered it with a tile. I was half expecting the tiles to start slowly falling off the ceiling, but after 3 hot summer days, all of the tiles were firmly in place, so it seemed like those command strips would hold, and I was in the clear. I was so excited to finally start building the library itself, but before moving on to the cabinetry, I wanted to deal with these ugly gaps in the corners. I picked up some solid sapele, which is kind of a lesser known hardwood, and it's got this beautiful, rich, dark, orangey brown color. I was originally planning to use walnut for everything, but my local lumber supplier had a sick deal on sapele plywood, and honestly, I like the color of this stuff even more than walnut. I nailed these strips into the corners to hide the gaps in the wallpaper while creating this classy trimmed look. These trim pieces would become a bit of a nightmare to work around later on in the project, but for now, I was just stoked to finally do some woodworking.
Whoops.
Well, after making sure my track saw, dust collector, and air filter weren't all plugged into the same surge protector, I started breaking down plywood to build some cabinets. The reason it felt so good to finally use some power tools was I spent hours completely redesigning the library from that original 3D model. Why? Well, at first, I wanted to do classic solid bookcases, except one of them would actually move. You see, when you build 2 bookcases that meet in a corner, you have all of this dead space, and I wanted to build a secret mechanism so that the long bookcase could roll into this corner, revealing a hidden compartment on the other side, but that has 2 major downsides. First, building solid bookcases out of big pieces of plywood would be an absolute nightmare inside of this tiny closet, and frankly, it would be counterproductive to this whole aesthetic I was creating because the back piece would hide all of the wallpaper, which I really like. I could do some sort of open back with just little stops in the bottom, but now this is just a weird, awkward design. Okay, I guess that was already 2 downsides. So the third downside is that getting a big, heavy bookcase to roll side to side safely and reliably just felt unnecessary, and frankly, it felt dangerous. Sure, I could probably figure it out with some DC motors, 3D printed gears. We would need some sort of hidden rail to hold it in place, but this all just felt wrong. And the nice thing about building projects for yourself is you get to decide how to build it. So rather than creating a horrible experience for myself, I decided to build 2 cabinets for the bottom with a different type of hidden compartment in that dead corner, and then wall-mounted bookshelves instead of freestanding bookcases. This would allow me to keep the wallpaper visible while still creating the luxurious feeling of built-ins. So right here, I'm working on one of those 2 lower cabinets, and this slot will hold a tambour door. I've never made one of these before, but they look so satisfying. The door will ride in this slot, but my CNC isn't big enough to cut the slot in one go, so I split the cut in half, flipped the board, aligned it to my 0 as best I could. Unfortunately, the 2 cuts were slightly misaligned, which was really disappointing in the moment. However, the misalignment is right in the center where the doors will meet, so it won't affect the sliding. No use dwelling on a little imperfection. We got bigger fish to fry. I 3D printed this mock-up of the tambour door using 2 solid layers as a stand-in for the cloth backing, and it seemed like these dimensions would work great, so I ironed on some edge banding, assembled the cabinet, and headed over to the Vancouver hackspace with my big piece of solid sapele, which I would use to make the slats that would form the tambour door. Even though I have a garage workshop, I don't have every tool, and with limited space, I don't really want to buy every tool. For the tools that I don't have, I have a membership to my local hackspace. It's 75 Canadian dollars per month, or about 55 US dollars, which in my opinion is kind of a great deal. I constantly use their miter saw, the big table saw, which makes much cleaner cuts than my little contractor saw, planer, jointer, and it's just an awesome community. I didn't mean for this part of the video to be an ad for Hackspaces. I just think they're great underutilized resources. If you want to build stuff and you don't have tools or space, 1000% look for a Hackspace or Makerspace in your area. I think I made 180 slats for the tambour doors, and every single one had to get finished with 3 coats of a spray-on urethane. I used hard wax oil for everything else in this project, but it seemed like applying this to 180 slats would be awful, so I opted for the easy button.
That was easy.
I did 3 coats total, and I figured out a good assembly line for sanding and wiping off the dust before the final coat, had some time to catch up on my favorite YouTubers, 1 final coat of finish, and...
Okay, I think it is finally time to build these doors. I got all my slats made out nice and organized. I got my backer cloth cut to size. I even built a jig, so you could say I'm feeling pretty confident.
Actually, I was feeling nervous for this high-stakes glue-up, but one way I push through nervousness is by hyping myself up.
Locked in.
But still, I couldn't completely bury those feelings.
No going back now. This has been like such a long side quest. Oh my gosh, and I really want this to... I've been wanting to make a tambour door for so long. I want it to be good.
In case it wasn't obvious, the slats are all upside down and I'm spreading glue on the back. The idea is you apply just enough glue so that every slat is covered, but not too much because you don't want the glue soaking through the cracks and gluing the slats together. You just want a uniform surface so that a piece of canvas will adhere to every single slat, joining them into one flexible door.
All right, the glue's been drying for about an hour. I don't want it to dry too long or else the glue that leaked between the slats will permanently bond them together. So we're gonna demold this thing and hopefully we can just roll it right up. Ooh, oh, that's looking promising. Oh, let's go!
Seeing 100 slats of wood roll up like a single piece of cloth instantly made the hours of cutting, sanding, and finishing all feel worth it.
This is so cool.
But this thing wasn't a door yet, so I glued up the second panel and then brought these over to the table saw to trim the uneven sides and cut a rabbet into both ends. This would allow the doors to slide into the slots on the cabinet, and I did this by taking a bunch of table saw cuts spaced really close together, which didn't give the cleanest results, so I carved this smooth with a utility knife and gave it a quick sanding, and all that gave me a nice uniform rabbet. While I was working on the doors, I was also finishing up the cabinet, and those first pieces you saw me building, those are toe kicks, which, as the name implies, they give your toe somewhere to go when you stand in front of the cabinet. I just used pocket holes to attach these to the bottom since you would never see the inside, finished the cabinet with 2 coats of a hard wax oil, and it was finally time to install the doors.
Pretty nervous, not gonna lie. A lot has led up to this moment, so let's just rip the Band-Aid off.
All of my fears boil down to the doors not sliding smoothly or getting stuck, so I rubbed the contact areas with a mineral oil beeswax blend to help the sliding as much as possible.
All right, everything's nice and oiled up. Whoops. Immediately getting stuff on my hands. Oh, no way. No way. No way. Is it perfect? Oh my Lord. Oh my gosh. I think it might be perfect.
Okay, so the first door fit perfectly, but what are the odds that the second door would also fit?
Wow. This is awesome.
Things don't normally work out for me on the first try, so this was pretty exciting. I 3D printed these custom blocks on the H2S to close off the track and force the doors to roll around the back of the cabinet where they disappear like magic.
Oh my God. It's so satisfying.
With these massive tambour doors actually working, I felt like I could do anything, and that energy was gonna be helpful because for the second cabinet, I was attempting another type of door, which I've never built before. This one would have sliding bypass doors. I wanted to do tambour for both, but the main function of the second cabinet would be to hide all of these cords, and since they're permanently attached to the wall, there's no space for tambour doors to slide around the back. Now these pieces will be the doors themselves, and those cutouts will hold bypass door hardware. The bottom pieces are wheels that ride in a slot, and the top pieces are spring-loaded tongues. They're spring-loaded so you can actually get the door into the slot from the front. Now I thought I was being smart. Using this store-bought hardware, I measured it exactly to create matching slots in the cabinet. Worked great, but I didn't really like how the slots exposed the white plywood underneath. Let's ignore the fact that this is the look on the other cabinet, but anyways, I thought I could easily disguise the slots with some leather dye, and this was a terrible idea. It bled everywhere, so now it looked even worse. So I just carved out everything and 3D printed some inserts in black. Now, one great part about the Bamboo H2S is it's huge. Each of these inserts is 10 inches long. You can see I could easily print 4 of them with plenty of room to spare. The 3D printed inserts fit perfectly in the cutouts and definitely stuck out less than bright white plywood, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We gotta build that cabinet you're looking at. Okay, great. The cabinet is built with 2 coats of finish, got the 3D printed inserts glued in there, and we can move on to the much more interesting work of finishing the doors. If you're a design nerd like me, you might have clued into the fact that we've strayed a bit from the original Victorian aesthetic. These cabinets are looking pretty mid-century modern, but it's my library. I can mix styles if I want, and I really wanted to lean into the mid-century look with the cabinet handles. I carved these pieces out of solid sapele, and I machined a matching cutout into the doors, but I made them slightly shallower than the handles, so they sit about 1/8 of an inch proud of the plywood. I love how these handles came out, very classic mid-century modern, but to be honest, I don't really like the overall look of this cabinet. The bypass door hardware creates these really big gaps above and below the doors, and a couple days after building this, I went to this antique store and saw this beautiful vintage cabinet. I wish I just used wooden slots like this. It's super smooth, there are no gaps, but honestly, I don't think anyone will even notice this detail once it's installed in the library. I hadn't been in the library in a couple weeks, so I was so excited to get back in there and continue transforming the space, but I had only test fit the cabinets in the wide open shop, so I was pretty nervous that they wouldn't fit in this tiny closet. The big one went in easy, but the small one was a little trickier, trying to wedge it into that corner while wrangling the cords, but all of a sudden, it dropped into place and it's gone. Seeing those cords just disappear into the cabinet, I had to take a second and appreciate how far this closet has come. It was really starting to feel like a cozy library.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's sick, Morley. People would pay like $3,000 for that. Yeah, it's really comfortable.
Isn't it cozy?
Yeah, it's very cozy.
Imagine how cozy it would be if you didn't have the stomach flu.
Well, it was about to get a lot cozier because it was time to make the space really feel like a library and build the bookshelves. As you might have noticed in that clip with Eden, there's currently no lights in the library. I've just been using these filming lights, so I routed a slot into the bottom of every bookshelf to create a track for LED lighting strips. I actually used the CNC for the short shelves because this slot has a curve to meet up with the longer shelf, and my hope was that these strips would provide 95% of the necessary light. I don't want it to be too bright in there, but the strips will illuminate the spines of the books and hopefully create a really gentle ambient light in the entire space. But before I could get these lights installed, I had a lot of woodworking ahead of me. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that those trim pieces I nailed in the corners, those would come back to bite me, and here we are, living with my past decisions. I wanted the shelves to sit flush with the walls, which means I need cutouts for those trim pieces, but every corner is unique because I pulled the trim pieces out by different amounts to cover the different size gaps.
Bane of my existence!
So I 3D printed 3 unique jigs, one for each of the 3 corners, which the shelves would have to accommodate. This actually made the process really easy. I even embossed each jig so I could tell which corner it was for. So Eden's out of town this weekend. She's at her best friend's baby shower. And my goal, before she gets back, is to get all the shelves put in with their lights and move all of our books inside. Since these shelves would be holding lots of heavy books, I thought this would be a cool opportunity to test the strength of 3D printed shelf brackets. I designed these ones to be really subtle, just blend into the background, and I printed them using a high-strength carbon fiber reinforced nylon. Now, these engineering materials can be a bit tricky to print. This PAT CF likes a larger nozzle, which is no problem to switch out on the H2S. This machine also has active chamber heating, so no warping, and it's got a hot end which can get up to a blistering 350 degrees Celsius. The massive build volume of the H2S allowed me to print 11 of these at once, although it looked like I could fit more, but we'll see if these brackets are strong enough to support my library. Now, I didn't want the layout of my brackets to be dictated by stud locations, so, and please hold your pitchforks till the end of the video, I decided to mount the shelves with drywall anchors.
Oh my God, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the?
I know. Like you, I associate drywall anchors with getting ripped out of the wall from the force of a gentle breeze. Definitely not something you would trust to carry a shelf full of heavy books, but I don't know if you know this, I certainly didn't, but these scientists have been busy, and drywall anchors have actually come a long way since I was a kid. After staring at this wall for 5 minutes, I ended up spending a small fortune on these toggle bolts. Apparently these hold up to 238 pounds in half-inch drywall, which sounds a little far-fetched, but this wall has 3 layers of drywall, and I'm using 3 brackets per shelf. Each bracket has 2 screws, so I think I'll be safe. Unfortunately, I couldn't use the toggle bolts on the short wall because I think there's foam insulation behind the drywall. The little toggle couldn't flip down, so I ran back to the store and picked up these plug-style anchors. Don't pay attention to the 675-pound load limit, that's if they're in concrete. These hold 69 pounds apiece in drywall, and considering how small these shelves are, we got 2 brackets per shelf, and they're attached to the long shelves with dominoes, I think these should be plenty strong. Okay, didn't get as much done yesterday as I thought, but fell upstairs a little bit. It is day 2. Let's get the rest of these shelves in. I gotta stop the shot, the camera's in the way.
In a few weeks, I will get time to realize it's right before my eyes, and I can take it if it's what I want to do.
Alright, you ready for this? Oh, look at this. Look at how inviting it looks from the stairwell. Are you kidding? That goes crazy.
I can tell just what you want. You don't want to be alone. You don't want to be alone.
Whoa! Oh, that's sick! Oh my God, those are, wow! Oh, cool. Excuse me.
Okay, I don't want to show too many beauty shots right here because there were still some very important finishing touches to add before this would become the cozy library of my dreams.
This adding the seat here, this is gonna change everything.
My dream library has to have a nice place to read a book, but with such a tiny room, I had to think a little outside the box. I made this seat back on the CNC, those holes are for ventilation, and I ordered some 3-inch upholstery foam. Also, pro tip, if you ever want to make your own cushions, you can cut the foam with a bread knife. I picked out some lovely red fabric that would fit the cozy vibe of the library, but Eden is a lot better than me at sewing, and she graciously volunteered to make the cushion covers.
You look very focused. Can you not hear me? Can you not hear me right now?
What?
You look very focused.
I'm very focused.
Thank you, love you.
While she was working on that, I found some free models on MakerWorld to 3D print and fill out the library. I absolutely love this striped swirl lamp by Solder. It prints in spiral vase mode with a beefy 0.8mm nozzle, which looks so cool. Instead of disguising the layers, this highlights them, almost looking like a piece of ceramic. I printed the base out of this clay brown wood PLA, which is a lovely match for the woodwork, but I was a little worried that the lamp would be too bright. It's already really nice in there with just the LED strips, so I got the dimmest light bulb that I could find, and honestly, it is the perfect amount of light. It's just right to create a cozy reading corner, and I was so excited to test this out, but Eden was still working on the cushions, so I made myself busy adding some more details to the library, and I printed this awesome T-Rex skull by 3D Prints, which adds such a fun Victorian element. Please spam the comments with Eden is the GOAT. She has her own full-time job, she worked on these cushions after work, and I think she absolutely crushed it.
There's the thumbnail.
I picked up a throw pillow to add a bit of color, which is also perfect for supporting your book while you read, and the tiny library was nearly finished. But there was still one more thing that I had to build, something that every library needs: an awesome secret compartment.
Ow! Oh! Oh! That's the worst!
If you've been paying close attention, you probably noticed this hole on top of the small cabinet. The secret compartment will emerge from this hole using a linear actuator. Unfortunately, I didn't finish designing the secret compartment until the cabinet was all built, so I had to take it out of the library and cut out part of the bottom so that the linear actuator would actually fit inside. I printed this little stand which holds it at exactly the right height and printed the compartment itself in 2 parts out of carbon fiber reinforced PLA. I like this filament because the carbon fibers make the layer lines practically invisible, kind of the opposite of the lamp. I glued the 2 halves together, and a hole in the bottom mates with the rod in the linear actuator. I cut out a piece of solid sapele on the CNC, and that fits perfectly in this hole with a tiny bit of space, just enough so that it doesn't get stuck when moving up and down. Now, a loose switch was not gonna do it. I wanted to hide the switch inside of a bust, like in the Batman TV show from the 60s, and I found this amazing dragon bust by Messy Panda on MakerWorld. Eden and I both love fantasy books, I love playing Skyrim, so this really fit the library perfectly. Although it did take like 2 hours to modify the bust to hold the switch because for some reason I insist on doing everything in Fusion. Now, I'm not the world's best painter, but I've done a little weathering in the past, mostly painting Nerf guns as a kid, and I wanted the bust to look like an old beat-up metal statue, so I did 2 coats of primer, 2 coats of brown, and then dry brushed the whole thing with black. This broke up the uniformity a little bit, but the real magic happened when I dry brushed the statue with gold. This really highlighted all of the detail and brought the dragon to life. The 2 halves are hinged together with an M5 screw. I glued in some magnets to add a bit of oomph to the closure, and it was time to install the dragon in the library. Finishing touches, I printed this insert that slots into those 3 holes in the compartment just to add a bit of contrast, but you could swap this out with a custom holder for whatever you want to keep in your secret compartment. I also installed a motion activated light, and at this point you're probably wondering, what in the world is he going to keep in that secret compartment? Well, snacks, of course. Reading a book in the library is even nicer than I imagined. It's so cozy in there, and I situated the reading nook so you get a view out of this window, and that really helps avoiding any feeling of claustrophobia. Although it does get a little warm in the summer, so I'm excited to cozy up in there this winter.
Oh.
Now, to truly turn this into a secret library, I want to build a secret door that covers this opening. Unfortunately, this project is so big that will have to be a separate video, so let me know in the comments your ideas for a secret door.
You know what this needs?
What?
It needs a door here so I could close it and go, you can leave me now.
There are some constraints, so to help with your brainstorming, I love showing off the library to people who visit, so it'll probably be open a lot of the time. I want the door to look great whether it's open or closed. And when it is open, I don't want it to block that window. It's just so nice getting that natural light when you're reading in there. Couple ideas I've had: a painting with a hidden seam that splits in half, or maybe the complete opposite of that. Maybe a super gizmo-y door with gears and latches all on display. But those are just a couple of my ideas. Let me know what you think down in the description and maybe I'll build it. Oh, and of course, I rent this place, so I'm not gonna destroy the wall to build a door. Shout out to my landlord, Chris, for being a bro and allowing me to build cool stuff in this house. And a special shout out to my top supporters on YouTube memberships and Patreon: Paige Arlt, Luis Armendariz, and my mom, Kathy Kurt. Love you, Mom.